So Wolfman came and went like a fart in the wind, which is honestly all it deserved. I was hoping that coming out right after the excellent Nosferatu, Wolfman would also be great and help kick off a bit of a classic monster movie renaissance. But no! The good news is, that could still happen. Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein is coming up, and some awesome news just dropped that Robert Eggers is going to be making a werewolf movie set in the 1300s. Hell yes. But all of that is still a ways off, and in the meantime, the missus and I wanted to cleanse our palates by watching a werewolf movie that's actually good. And actually about a werewolf. We hadn't watched Ginger Snaps in at least a decade, and I didn't know she'd actually never seen it. So we decided to put it on and wash the taste of barely lit failure out of our mouths. It turned out to be the right choice in more ways than one, because not only is Ginger Snaps a great movie, but some of the things I complained about specifically in my Wolfman review are also done in Ginger Snaps, but done well. If you're unfamiliar, Ginger Snaps is a 2000 Canadian production. That means it was made in the year 2000 in Canada, not by 2000 Canadians. It was written by Karen Walton and John Fawcett, directed by John Fawcett, and stars Emily Perkins and Catherine Isabelle as Bridget and Ginger Fitzgerald, respectively. Toss in Mimi Rogers with a delightful performance as Bridget and Ginger's mom, as well as a strong supporting cast, fantastic special effects, and an excellent script. And you've got yourself a real beaut of a movie right there, I'll tell you that for free. Bridget and Ginger Fitzgerald are social outcast sisters with an obsession for the morbid and macabre. They hate everything that's nice and normal, stage gory photos of themselves in different death scenes, and even have a self-deletion pact for when Bridget turns 16, seeing it as the ultimate middle finger to society. Things change, however, when Ginger survives an attack by a strange animal. Oddly, her attitude towards normal teenage things shifts dramatically, causing Bridget to feel left behind. Unaware of the animal attack, their mother thinks Ginger is simply blossoming into womanhood. But her wounds heal faster than normal, she starts growing hair in stranger than usual places, and other things as well. As Ginger becomes less and less like her old self, Bridget begins to suspect that her changes have a far more sinister, supernatural cause. Unlike Wolfman, Ginger Snaps is a nearly pitch-perfect example of how to not only use a monster as a metaphor for a real-world subject, but how to do it in a way that makes sense and is also fun, scary, and entertaining. Wolfman attempts to use its monster, that ain't a werewolf and I'm not calling it one, as a stand-in for the trauma and violence that might be passed from an abusive parent to a child. There's the saying that hurt people, meaning that abusive people were often themselves abused by people who were also abused, forming a cycle of violence that is perpetuated from one generation to the next. Using the werewolf curse as a metaphor for this is actually a really good idea, but Wolfman's execution completely fumbles the ball because there is no abuse to be seen in the film. I won't go into full detail here, I covered this more in my review of Wolfman, but it comes off like the writers are saying discipline, and more specifically disciplinary fathers, is this horrible thing that must be stopped rather than actual abuse. Seriously, it's that clunky. By comparison, Ginger Snaps uses the werewolf curse as a metaphor for the changes a girl goes through in the transition to womanhood. Ginger is attacked by a werewolf right at the onset of her first period, and afterward begins experiencing strange pains, mood swings, and other bizarre developments, as well as all the normal stuff that happens to a girl during Shark Week. The werewolf has always been an obvious analogy for a woman's period. Both are tied to a 28-day or night cycle, both involve changes in mood and behavior, and both involve gallons of blood. Unlike Wolfman, Ginger Snaps executes this idea flawlessly. Ginger starts freaking out over the changes, gets bitchy and snarky with Bridget, who's just trying to help, gets horny for boys, and gets more comfortable with her femininity, carrying herself more confidently and wearing clothes that accentuate her figure. The excellent script, along with Catherine Isabelle's first-rate performance, man, I had a crush on her back in the day, portray this change perfectly as we watch a socially awkward girl become more assertive and self-assured in public, while privately she's scared and unsure of what's happening to her. It's great. Both movies also feature supporting characters who are close to the cursed person and have to watch as they slowly become more and more unrecognizable to them. Wolfman has Blake's wife Charlotte and daughter Ginger, turns out that is an homage to Ginger Snaps, who are trapped with this man who becomes less and less human and can no longer communicate with them. This could also be a good metaphor for an addict who's spiraling further and further downward as loved ones are powerless to stop their decline. And maybe it is, and that's also a great idea. But as with everything in this movie, it's just poorly done. There are things said about a troubled marriage and absent parents, but the actors' performances don't convey the heavy emotions that they're telling you they're experiencing, and there is zero chemistry between any of them, so none of it sells. On the other hand, Ginger Snaps has Ginger's sister Bridget, wonderfully portrayed by Emily Perkins. Bridget and Ginger are best friends who feel like they're alone together against the world. They share the same interests and outlook, they confide in one another, and while they're bitter and hostile towards outsiders, they deeply love each other. When Ginger begins showing interest in things and people they'd both long despised, Bridget feels like her sister is leaving her, like the one person in all the world who cared about her is turning her back on her. But Bridget and Ginger's relationship is stronger than hormonal changes or supernatural curses, and Bridget still loves her sister and tries to help her in spite of Ginger's insults and admonitions. Thanks again to the script and Emily Perkins' excellent performance, you actually care about her and her quest to help her sister, and the chemistry between Isabel and Perkins makes the sororital bond between the two feel real. You genuinely like and care about these characters. The one thing both movies have in common that I have a problem with on both sides is their portrayal of fathers. Neither one paints dads in a very positive light, but Wolfman is still the worst of the two by far. Ginger and Bridget's dad is just kinda checked out from his daughter's lives. He lets the mom run things while he takes a back seat. He doesn't have a big part in the movie, and mostly just wears a baffled look when Ginger looks to him for a little help or his wife berates him. You could look at it like the writers are saying that dads need to be more authoritative and present in their kids' lives, which is a good message, and it's how I've decided to read it, but honestly, they either should have done more with him or left him out altogether. However you want to slice it though, it's way better than Wolfman's take. Wolfman's outlook on dads is basically this: dads are a problem and need to go. Doesn't matter if that's what 1L intended, I don't see any other way to read the movie. Neither Blake nor his father are abusive assholes. Both love their children and want to protect them, but they both commit the apparently heinous sin of disciplining them verbally. And the movie says that right there. The father that disciplines his children is the source of all the hurt in the world, and if we just get rid of him, we'll find paradise. Ginger Snap seems to criticize fathers who do too little, while Wolfman actually hates them for merely existing. Finally, let's talk about the 800-pound gorilla, or rather wolf, in the room. Both of these movies claim to be about werewolves, but only one of them delivers on that claim. Wolfman is a joint production of Blumhouse and Universal, and was advertised as being an update on Universal's classic Lon Chaney Jr. movie, The Wolfman. In The Wolfman, Chaney plays John Talbot, who's bitten by a werewolf and thus afflicted by the werewolf curse. Under the full moon, he transforms into an uncontrollable beast, but at sunrise he reverts back to human form with no recollection of the night's happenings. It's an excellent movie about a tragic protagonist seemingly punished for the crime of trying to do the right thing. Wolfman has not one iota in common with The Wolfman. Oh sure, Blake gets scratched, which is the catalyst for his change, but the so-called curse is more like a viral disease that, once contracted, never goes away. It's just a sort of super rabies and you never revert back to human form. You're simply a wild animal forever after. The fact that the movie takes place at night is purely circumstantial and has nothing to do with the change. Blake isn't turned by the full moon. It's just dark because that's when the movie needs to take place for maximum scare value, which, by the way, the movie has none. There's no mention of Wolfsbane or Silver anywhere in the movie either. It is not a werewolf movie. The funny thing is, Ginger Snaps has way more in common with the Wolfman, and it's not even claiming to be based on that movie. Ginger is herself an innocent victim, afflicted with a curse that causes her to lose control and do horrible things. She turns with the full moon. There's Wolfbane and Silver involved. Plus, get this, there's an actual werewolf.
Get right out of town.
It's true, and the creature effects are fantastic. Ginger Snaps is more of a reimagining of the Wolfman than the stupid movie that's called Wolfman and released by Universal. And it's not even trying. Oi! And I won't spoil anything, but both movies also have similar endings. But the payoff in Ginger Snap actually hits you in the gut, while Wolfman just farts in your face. It even tries to rip off a scene from another vastly superior movie, The Fly, and I actually got a little bit of secondhand embarrassment from it. Paying homage to other films is great, but if your movie is a stinker, do them a favor and leave them out of it. So there you go, two movies that have quite a few similarities but are executed with wildly disparate degrees of success. It's like two chefs had the same recipe and the same ingredients, but one baked a delicious cake and the other just set the kitchen on fire and burned the house down. Both movies have similar ideas, but ideas are only as good as their execution, and where Wolfman fails completely, Ginger Snaps succeeds marvelously. If you haven't seen it before, or if it's been a while, watch Ginger Snaps.